Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Dungeon Master Deep Dive. Tonight, I want to be a little bit more open with you. We've all been there. I've been there. Watching Critical Role, seeing Dimension 20, and thinking, I'll never be that good. Tonight, I'm going to talk about the Mercer effect, or what is commonly known as when DMs feel inadequate compared to high production games. And I want to frame this episode as an opportunity to really rediscover your voice, both as a player or if you're watching as a GM, behind the screen and in games, because you don't need to be Matthew Mercer or Brendan Lee Mulligan or Brian Iyengar to be you. And that's what I want to talk about this evening. So without further ado, let's dive in. And welcome back. So again, like we talked about in the intro, tonight we're talking about being unique. And I understand that sounds cliche, because everybody talks about how you should just be you. But there's some truth that we need to explore in that statement. You should be you in a small game, and that's okay. So, like we talked about in the intro, the Matthew Mercer effect, or commonly known as the Mercer effect, is a feeling when dungeon masters and game masters don't feel adequate enough when they are playing their games and running their games compared to these high production value games like Critical Role, Dimension 20, or anything else. So, it obviously feels like a lot of pressure when you walk into a room and you, as a game master, feel like that you have to deliver to the level that these big dungeon masters are playing at, because that's what's going to make your players happy and have a good time with the game. And honestly, I want to just be vulnerable and talk about how comparison is a trap. It is not that you are trying to compete with published cinematic games. They are running games and publishing content as a successful company. You are probably not doing that, but if you're like me, who is trying to work on that, you have to understand, and just like I understand now in my many years of experience, that I'm not Critical Role. And so we forget that those shows really easily have editors, sound teams, cameras, years of preparation. They have, for every one person you see on screen, there's 20 people standing behind them that is supporting them as staff. And even here at Arcane Adventures, we don't really have that. We have myself and my players, and we make up the cast and crew of Arcane Adventures, and that's it. We occasionally bring in guest characters, but that's all we have. So we have to run the game and also run all the logistics behind the game too, and so we're supporting ourselves. So it's okay to admire the big dungeon masters, to admire those big production shows, but it is fully unhealthy to try to imitate them completely in your own right. So I'm going to be a little bit vulnerable with you tonight, and then we can move a little bit forward and talk about more of the truth behind it and what a healthy inspiration looks like versus a more harmful comparison. In my early days, when I started GMing many years ago, it's been over a decade now, which is crazy to think, but I've been watching Critical Role since the very beginning. I've watched Dimension 20s for quite some time now on Dropout, and I fell very quickly into the trap of very young me thinking that I had to deliver what those games had. And even early Critical Role was still leaps and bounds what I was delivering, and I was thinking, even though they just started out here, I have to deliver that. And there were moments that comparison was taking away the fun of the game that I was playing. It was stealing the joy of playing Dungeons & Dragons or any TTRPG with my friends, which is the whole reason you play a TTRPG. You're not playing it to produce content, you're playing it because you enjoy it, because you love it. So you'll ask me what changed my mind. How did I get to this point? And truth be told, there are still days that I feel like I'm not adequate enough as a game master. But the true defining point is the simple realization of I'm not Matt Mercer. I'm not Brendan Lee Mulligan. My name is Mason, and I'm me, not them. Arcane Adventures is not Critical Role, and it's not trying to be Critical Role. It's ours, and it belongs to me, and it belongs to my players and my friends, and that's special, and that's what I want. Is I want the game that we are telling to be special, and I want you, if you're a game master listening, or if you're a player listening and thinking about your dungeon master right now, to realize that the group that you have is special, and you don't need to be a massive production company producing a TTRPG actual play to be happy and have a great time in your group. Because the truth behind it is that every table is 100% unique. Every group provides their own mix of personalities and pacing and humor and comfort and emotion. There are inside jokes at the table here at Arcane Adventures. There are NPC voices that I use. Those are quirks to the world that we play in. And no one else can recreate that. No one can replicate that, even as hard as you try. It's just like I can't replicate everything that these big game masters do and these big production companies do. They can't replicate everything I can do. Because the magic of the game, the arcane part of Arcane Adventures, just like the magic that lies in your game, whether it's a home game or another production, it lies in authenticity. It's not about imitation. It's about being unique. And that's what makes it special, is that it is the only place in the entire world where you get to tell that story with that character, with that group of people. So what's healthy inspiration versus harmful comparison? Inspiration is fuel. I take inspiration from Critical Role. I take it from Dimension 20. I take it from the Dungeon Dudes, and I take it from Jenny D, and I take it from Pointy Hat, and I take it from D&D Shorts, and all of these wonderful YouTubers and these actual plays, and I compile those things along with great novels that I've read and great movies that I've seen, and I take inspirations and pieces of that and put that into the world, and I manage how I run my game based on what I like from those things. But comparison is unhealthy because it's a fire that will burn you out. It is exhausting to consistently compare yourself to a group of people that you're not going to be. And that's the truth that you have to get in your head. You're not gonna be those people, and that's okay, because you're you, and you don't need to be them. You need to be yourself. There are boundaries that you need to set. Take what sparks your joy, take what inspires you, what gets those world-building cogs turning, take what you think would be good for your players, and leave behind whatever you think is too much. Because again, in TTRPGs, you're not playing to be pressured, you're playing because you want to have a good time, just like your players do. So, I like Matthew Mercer's session pacing. I think it's very good. I try to mimic some of the things that he does, but I'm not trying to copy his exact tone. His performance style isn't necessary, and though I like doing fun little NPC voices and fun little quirks in our games and little sound effects, I'm not going to be able to do every voice that Matt Mercer can do because he's a professional voice actor and I'm an amateur voice actor. So I'm encouraging you as dungeon masters and game masters to ask yourself the question, does this make my table better, or does it just make me feel worse? Does it just put more pressure on my shoulders? And if it is putting too much pressure on your shoulders, you don't need that. Your game is going to be just fine, I promise you, without all that extra pressure. You don't need it. So let's talk about some practical tips for confidence and growth in home games, in productions, and in actual plays. You need to focus on connection, not perfection. Remember that your players do not remember your perfect villain voice or monologue. They remember how you make them feel. So focus rather on what you're trying to get across and more how you're getting it across. Remember that emotion is a powerful tool, and I'm not saying be manipulative or use emotion in a bad way, but I am saying that how you make your players feel is how they're going to remember your game. So if you're making them feel loved, if you're making them enjoy the game, if they're laughing and smiling, they're going to remember those things, versus if you go on this exposition of lore for 30 minutes, because I've done that in the past, and you watch your players go, ugh, this again. And some players like that. And so I like to go on lore expeditions, and sometimes they find the big reveals to be fun, but you don't want to do too much of that. You want to really focus on your players are the priority. The game is driving, the story is moving, but the players are the bits of the engine that make it go. They are the fuel that you need to get from point A to point B to have a campaign or a successful story. And you want to make sure that you're taking care of that special part of the game, because that's the one thing in your game that's not replaceable. My second advice tip is to start where you are. Remember that Dimension 20, remember that Critical Role, remember that every successful YouTuber started somewhere. You have to start at a home table. You have to start small. Critical Role will even admit to you that they could not have imagined when they started streaming their home game that became an actual play that they would have ever foreseen that they would have gotten to the degree of success that they're at now. And Arcane Adventures started small. It started as a home game just amongst friends, and we decided, what if we could do something more? What if we could step beyond that home game boundary? We started somewhere too. And though we're not the biggest channel on YouTube by any means, we've gained a little bit of traction, and that's exactly what we're trying to get. What I'm trying to get you to see is that people started somewhere. Matthew Mercer did not become a veteran DM. He started as a novice DM. He was an amateur DM, just like Brendan Lee Mulligan, who sat there as a kid trying to dream about where they were going. And then they worked day in and day out over years, over decades, to become that kind of successful person. And it's taken me a long time to realize that just like I had to start somewhere, they did too. And we started at the same place, which is no experience and nothing. My third set of advice here, for little tips and tricks, is to set your own success metric. If you're running a home game, you don't even have to worry about views or followers. You're just focused on the shared memories and the laughter and the enjoyment at the table. But even if you are an actual play, you, again, are not looking for views. You're not looking for followers. Those are nice benefits, and I love to see people enjoying the content that we enjoy at the table, and that's why we produce it, so that we can share that joy with other people. But we also, here at Arcane Adventures, focus on the laughter and the emotions and those memories that we make at the table, those inside jokes, those little quirks about the world that we play in, because it's our story and it's not somebody else's story. And so it's your own success. If you have players eager to come to next session because they want to keep enjoying that time with friends, you're winning. You're winning D&D, and you don't need anything else to tell you otherwise. My fourth advice tip here is to build a community, not a competition. I'm encouraging as GMs and as players to be open about the conversation of burnout and creative exhaustion amongst everyone at the table. I've been burned out a little bit before too, where you don't really have the drive anymore. You're kind of at a creative roadblock, basically a writer's block, where you just feel like the game is adding too much pressure to your life and it's not really bringing you any joy or happiness. And it is okay to take a step back and say, I need a break. It is also okay to tell your players that. They need to hear that. Treat them like adults. They need to hear sometimes that you need a break. And players, if your dungeon master seems that they're a little tired, don't be afraid to ask them if they need a break. Maybe you could swap out, let somebody run a one-shot, or change DMs, or start another campaign and take a hiatus. In Arcane Adventures, I've done this a couple times before. I let Owens, actually, not too long ago from the time that we're making this video, create our Hestara one-shot, because I was super busy with school and professional exams and all of that stuff, that I really didn't have time to outline a one-shot for our anniversary, and he was more than willing to do it, and he did a great job. And there are other instances in our history at Arcane Adventures that I've let people GM at the table, and I've loved it. Love sitting back as a player and watching what they get to create and add to the world, and it's okay to do that, because that's our community, and each player and each game master shares in the ownership of the world that you're playing and the game that you're playing, and that is what you're looking for. It's not about trying to compete with these big actual plays or these big names that you hear in media nowadays. It's about what you have at your table, and that's what is special, and that's all you really need. And my fifth and final tip here is to keep learning, but do it for yourself. and for your players. It is okay and encouraged to read, to watch, to play, but only go as far as the point that it inspires you, not pressures you. You don't need to be Matthew Mercer. You don't need to be Brendan Lee Mulligan, and that's okay. You need to be yourself, just like I did by myself. So it's okay, again, to take inspiration from these big shows, but only to the degree that it's adding to your game and making you feel more unique, and leaving the stuff behind that doesn't do that. You don't have to copy every NPC or every little voice, and your world is going to be just fine. Your game group's going to be just fine. Your friends are going to be just as happy, especially when you're upfront and honest with them about it, and you show them that you're doing what inspires you and doing what you love, and they're going to appreciate that because they're going to see that as that you are invested in them. You're not invested in becoming something else that you're not. You're not invested in becoming a group of people that are professionals at playing this game that we all love. You are doing something that is pouring into their lives and is making them happy and bringing them laughter and joy and fun, and you're doing that for yourself too, and that's what they're going to see. And that's what players really appreciate, and that's what when I've played before, that's what I appreciate. And I just really want to encourage everyone, GMs and players alike, to be honest and upfront about that in your games. So remember that every table tells a story that no one else can. The world does not need another big TTRPG actual play, and if you're shooting for that, shoot for the stars. And I wish you the best of luck, and that is absolutely okay that is your dream, and that's my dream. And so shoot for it, go for it. But remember that you don't need to be Matthew Mercer. You don't need to be Brendan Lee Mulligan, and those people are wonderful. I love them so much, and I've taken so much inspiration from them, and I love watching what they do and their craft and their love for the game. But remember that the world needs you as a Dungeon Master. It needs you to have a good group of players, and that's all you really need to run a successful game of Dungeons & Dragons, is to focus on yourself and take inspiration where you need to, and hit the ground running. And we've talked about before in previous episodes here about how there's a lot of other skills that go into it. Sure, it's not the only thing you need just to hit the ground running with some inspiration and a good group of friends, but it's a really good way to get started. So next time you sit down to run your game, remind yourself that the table that you see out in front of you, the players and the friends you see in front of you, the story that you are all collectively telling together is enough. Don't get lost in the comparison to somebody else. So, wherever you are in your Dungeon Master journey, or player journey, or somewhere in between, beginner, veteran, or whatever else, thank you for creating worlds, telling stories, and making magic just like we do here at Arcane Adventures. And I think that's where I'll leave it. Thanks for watching, and that's all for this episode of Dungeon Master Deep Dive, and we'll see you next time.